Greetings and good afternoon to all of you. It is now 12:14 on the 14th day of September 2020. We are here for a public hearing for abandonment petition AB 771 to consider an application received from Miles and Stockbridge PC on behalf of several applicants seeking the limited abandonment of two sections of the public right-of-way known as Ellsworth Drive in downtown Silver Spring. We are conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom. My name is Michael Paylor, and I am the County Executive's designated hearing officer with the county's Department of Transportation, and I will be conducting this hearing. This is an abandonment hearing that is being conducted pursuant to Section 4962F of the Montgomery County Code. My role in the abandonment process is to generate a report and make a recommendation to the county executive concerning the applicant's petition for abandonment. In order to do this, I will be considering statements made at the hearing, written comments received within the comment period, which is 2 weeks following today's hearing date, and documents submitted to support or explain a position. At the conclusion of the comment period, my report and recommendation will be forwarded to the county executive for consideration, and the county executive will then forward the report and the county executive's recommendation to the county council. The county council will decide whether to grant or deny the applicant's petition for limited abandonment. It must be noted that a number of participants have registered to speak, and I will take this opportunity to stress what this hearing is about. The applicant has petitioned Montgomery County to consider a limited abandonment of Ellsworth Drive between Georgia Avenue and Fenton Street. It is my understanding from the petition that the applicant desires that the right-of-way for Ellsworth Drive be limited to pedestrian, bicycle, and emergency vehicles only. The applicant seeks to exclude typical vehicular traffic from Ellsworth Drive. The applicant contends that, except for emergency vehicles, the right-of-way for Ellsworth Drive is, one, no longer presently needed to support vehicular traffic, and two, that there is no anticipated need for Ellsworth Drive to support vehicular traffic in the foreseeable future. The report and recommendation that I will provide or prepare for the county executive will consider those two criteria based on the statements made at the hearing, written comments submitted within 2 weeks following today's hearing, and documents submitted. For those who wish to submit written comments, please submit them to Ms. Tiara McCrae at Montgomery County Department of Transportation, 100 Edison Park Drive, 4th floor, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20878 by September 28, 2020 at 5 p.m. For those who have registered to speak today, please bear my preliminary introductory comments in mind. If I find that you're offering comments that are not germane to the subject of this hearing, again, regarding Ellsworth Drive's present need for vehicular use or anticipated need for vehicular use in the foreseeable future, I may be compelled to interrupt you or inquire how your comments are relevant to the limited issue, the abandonment issue under consideration for which I'm writing a report and recommendation. Additionally, there are a few hearing protocols that we must cover before Ms. McCrae introduces the abandonment petition in the record. First, please turn off or silence any communication devices in your proximity. Second, as an issue of decorum, all participants will be given their due consideration. In so granting that participants be given their due consideration, those offering comments following the close of petitioner's case for abandonment are asked to limit their comments to matters relevant to whether the petition for limited abandonment ought to be granted. During this hearing, such comments should be confined to 3 minutes or less, and I will be holding strictly to this limit. Keep in mind that if you have additional comments, they may be submitted to Ms. McCrae by September 28, 2020 at 5 p.m. Also, if one participant is interrupted by another participant while offering comments following the petitioner's case for abandonment, I will issue the interrupting participant their first warning. If there's a second interruption, I will issue a second warning, and that particular interrupting participant will be muted. If that same individual receives a third warning for interrupting, that participant may be removed from the call. And while I do not participate this occurrence or additional occurrences such as this, if there are several participants making interruptions, I may elect to close the hearing. Now I introduce Ms. Tiara McCrae, real estate specialist from Montgomery County, to present the case. Ms. McCrae.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. As Michael stated, my name is Tiara McCray, and I'm a real estate specialist within the Transportation Engineering Division of the Department of Transportation. My office is responsible for administration of the request to abandon county rights of way. The applicant has petitioned Montgomery County to consider a limited abandonment of Ellsworth Drive between Georgia Avenue and Fenton Street. That is to say, it is my understanding from the petition that the applicant desires that the right-of-way for Ellsworth Drive be limited to pedestrian and essential vehicular traffic only. The petitioner defines essential vehicles as emergency and delivery vehicles. Thus, the applicant seeks to exclude normal vehicular traffic from Ellsworth Drive. The applicant contends, except for essential vehicles, that the right-of-way for Ellsworth Drive is 1, no longer presently needed to support vehicular traffic, and 2, there is no anticipated need for Ellsworth Drive to support vehicular traffic in the foreseeable future. By way of background, I would like to offer the following history concerning Ellsworth Drive. First, Lower Ellsworth. When Silver Spring was being revitalized, the Peterson Company's PFA sought and obtained the abandonment of a portion of Ellsworth from Georgia Avenue to just before City Place, referred to as Lower Ellsworth. However, the County Council required as a condition of the abandonment and Council Resolution 13-1429 that an access easement be recorded against portions of the revitalized Silver Spring, including Ellsworth Drive. The provision of the access easement specific to Ellsworth Drive provides for, and I quote, a perpetual non-exclusive easement and right of passage and use free of charge for vehicular and pedestrian ingress and egress on, over, over and across Ellsworth Drive. In addition to recording the access easement among the land records, the county and PFA also entered into a long-term lease for Ellsworth Drive that set out the manner in which Ellsworth can be used by the PFA. The current abandonment petition with respect to Lower Ellsworth is for the purpose of revising the access easement provision I just read to you. Specifically, vehicular traffic permitted on Lower Ellsworth would be revised so that A, only emergency and delivery vehicles could have ingress and egress on Lower Ellsworth. B, access to the public parking garage is retained via Georgia Avenue through the alley. And C, a few metered parking spaces on the street near a public garage on Georgia would be removed. 2, Upper Ellsworth. Upper Ellsworth was not a part of PFA's original abandonment petition when Silver Spring was revitalized. The current petition, if granted by the County Council, would also restrict non-essential vehicular access on Upper Ellsworth. Upper Ellsworth would remain publicly owned by the county and leased to PFA. Finally, the access easement. The access easement is recorded among land records of Montgomery County, Maryland in book 21768 at page 658. The quote from the access easement concerning Ellsworth Drive referenced at the top of my remarks is found in section 6 of the access easement on pages 660 and 661. The recorded access easement will be read into record shortly. I will now introduce the exhibits and written comments we have received into record, but for the sake of time, we will not be able to read each individual written and emailed comments, but a collection of letters, emails, and comments will be included in a package for the hearing officer to consider. Please accept the following exhibits into record. Exhibit A, the applicant petition for abandonment package. Exhibit B, the abandonment filing fee that was submitted via wire transfer. Exhibit C, County Council Resolution 13-1429. Exhibit D, public access easement, book 21768, page 658. Exhibit E, plat number 22271, which is a subdivision record plat. Exhibit F is the downtown Silver Spring ground lease, including interior Ellsworth Drive. Exhibit G is the memorandum of ground lease, book 21768, page 730. Exhibit H, plat number 21283, which is the ground lease plat. Exhibit I, executive order number 84-20. Exhibit J is a comment received from the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services, the Fire Department Access and Water Supply, supporting conditionally the abandonment. Exhibit K is Washington Gas's comment, which is in support of the abandonment. Exhibit L is the WSSC comment received with a conditional approval requesting right-of-way for the existing structures. Exhibit M is Montgomery County Planning Board's conditional approval requesting a public access easement along Ellsworth Drive to allow for dog walking and the annual Silver Spring Thanksgiving Parade. Exhibit N is the Office of Transportation Policy Development Review Team's comment with a conditional approval providing access for emergency vehicles, a public access easement that should be revised to include pedestrian and bicycles. Maintenance of the right-of-way should be provided by the applicant, as well as existing utilities remaining in the public access. And then public access to Wayne Avenue, the Wayne Avenue garage, from Georgia Avenue. Exhibit O is Potomac Edison's comment explaining that they are outside of their territory. Exhibit P is the abandonment sign posting photo. Exhibit Q, the abandonment aerial photo. Exhibit R, the Washington Times ad number 43167 proof. Exhibit S is the Go Montgomery newsletter posting. Exhibit T is a collection of certified mailed public hearing notices submitted to the applicant and all abutting property owners. Exhibit U is a collection of public hearing notices that have been submitted to both civic associations, HOA, regional service centers, county agencies, utility companies, etc. Exhibit V is the Montgomery County Planning Board Downtown Silver Spring Project and Site Plan Staff Report and Attachment. Exhibit W is the Montgomery County Planning Board Project Plan Resolution number 919980005C. Exhibit X is Montgomery County Planning Board Site Plan Resolution number 8199902M. Exhibit Y is the Stormwater Partners Network of Montgomery County letter to the Montgomery County Planning Board on the issue of synthetic turf. Exhibit Z is the Community Reconsideration Request. Exhibit AA is the applicant's letter responding to the project plan's reconsideration request. Exhibit AB is the applicant's public hearing PowerPoint presentation. Exhibit AC is Don Hoover, landscape architect's resume. Exhibit AD is the applicant's response on synthetic turf issues. Exhibit AE is a collection of 117 general public comments received directly via email. Exhibit AF are comments that have been intercepted from County Council email directly related to the abandonment. That concludes my reading of exhibits.
Thank you, Ms. McCray. At this time, we will hear the petitioner's case for abandonment.
Tiara, who from the applicant needs to be unmuted?
If you could unmute Barbara Sears, please.
Sure.
And the rest of the applicant team can be unmuted as well.
All right, one moment.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello? Yeah. Okay, great. This is Barbara Sears. Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. Just couldn't get back on. Thanks for the statements. We will be presenting the applicant's case through myself, Bryant Folger, representing the applicant, Don Hoover as an expert in landscape architecture, and Jeff Amato as a registered civil engineer in the state of Maryland. The latter two we would like to offer as experts in their fields for acceptance in their testimony as an expert in those fields. And then we also have, as part of the applicant's team, Paul of Peterson is representing the applicant as well, and Ian Duke, who has been at VICA the manager of the case thus far. So for VICA, so they can answer any questions that the hearing examiner might have. So we would like to make a preliminary statement to the hearing examiner, and that is a request that in view of all the material that has been submitted on the synthetic turf, we believe that that issue is not properly considered in this abandonment before the hearing examiner and the county council. And that is because the issue was decided as part of the project plan and the site plan approvals. And those resolutions that Ms. McCrae mentioned have gone out. They went out on July 7th. They were mailed, and they determined the use of the turf was approved in the design, so that that issue does not relate to, it's not relevant to the issue of the need for the present need or future need of the access easement or right-of-way for public use. So we would ask that the testimony be limited to exclude that testimony and evidence. Over that objection, we have submitted the, subject to that objection, we have submitted the request for reconsideration that also, and the site plan and project plan staff report, as well as the opposition to the consideration request, showing that these same issues were raised in the project and site plan on the turf very extensively. Agency recommendations were obtained on stormwater, fire, health and safety, and from DP and DEP, as well as MCDOT. And the issue was determined as part of those proceedings. The reconsideration was filed to those approvals and was not granted by Park and Planning. And once again, the same arguments were made. So they have become final. No appeal was filed. And we believe that the proper issue is as read out by the hearing examiner according to Chapter 49, which is the present and future need for the abandoned areas for public use. So we would like to make that statement as we go forward and have that objection of record. Subject to that objection, we have also submitted responses to the objections that were contained in the prior proceedings and for the record. So with that, I don't know if the hearing examiner wants to rule on that or just stand by his statement at the start of the proceedings.
Thank you, Ms. Sears. At this time, I'm not going to make a ruling on it. I'll take it under advisement. I hadn't had the opportunity to look at or review much of the information that you had just presented.
Okay. Well, with that objection then, if you have it as a continuing objection, we'll proceed. And The issues, I think, have been very well laid out, and the history laid out well by both the hearing examiner and Ms. McCrae. So I want to just mention that the total area of the public use easement is 21,170 square feet, and the Ellsworth abandonment area is 8,055 square feet. So the majority of this area that comprised Ellsworth Drive from Georgia to Fenton was abandoned back in 1999, and the public use easement granted by the county to PFA use at that time. So with that, I'd like to start off with Brian Folger, who can also add to that history and explain the purpose of the abandonment from the point of view of the applicant.
Thank you, Barbara. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. My name is Brian Folger. I'm the chairman of Folger Pratt. We are a real estate development company. Montgomery County. We do work all over the Washington region and in the West. We have an office in California. I'm joined today by Paul Weinshank, who is an officer, the president of development for the Peterson Companies, a company that is involved in real estate development all over the Washington region. They're headquartered in Northern Virginia. The Peterson Companies and Folger Pratt came together well over 20 years ago to join in the redevelopment of downtown Silver Spring. The history is relevant here, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go through some of that with you. Downtown Silver Spring was an area that had gone through an extended period of decline. This decline started back in the 60s and 70s and continued on into the 80s. And in the early 1990s, there were two efforts that were put together to redevelop downtown Silver Spring in public-private ventures. And they were the topic of tremendous discussion and honestly an awful lot of dispute. And both of them failed to really move forward and to completion. And a new county executive, Doug Duncan, was elected then, and Doug invited me and a number of other developers in the DC area to take a look at what could be done in downtown Silver Spring. And the position that I took and that the Peterson together we took with Mr. Duncan was that about the last thing this county wanted was, or the citizens of Silver Spring wanted, was another plan imposed upon them. And so ultimately we were chosen to redevelop this site. And we did it working with a steering committee that the county executive put together, representing civic associations, civic activists, religious leaders, business leaders, people who lived in downtown Spring, a wide array of people. And we worked through how we would redevelop this project and developed with them a plan. And that plan called for a number of outdoor uses that would support the retail and the restaurants and the other uses that would be there. And what is out there today is almost identical to what that steering committee approved, and ultimately was later approved by the planning board and the county council, and ultimately the state, even because the state provided some of the funding for some of the public. So this whole plan and everything that is out there is very much the result of a tremendous amount of cooperation and collaboration between the public sector, the private sector, and the community and the citizens of downtown Silver Spring. As Barbara mentioned, back in 1999, most of Ellsworth was abandoned, but for this small section that we're discussing today in front of what was then called City Place, now Ellsworth Place. The reason that portion was not abandoned, well, the abandonment took place so that we could create a public environment there that would allow for vehicular traffic, but was also one where we could have public events and programming and things like that that would support the downtown Silver Spring project and in turn the Silver Spring community. The reason that this portion was not abandoned was at the time it was thought that under an abandonment, it would revert, that property under abandonment reverts to the adjoining property. And it was thought at that time that the adjoining property was in fact City Place. And so that this piece of, that's the subject of today's abandonment would have reverted to the ownership of City Place. And that was not the intent. And so we held off with the county, all in cooperation with the county and the planning board, we held off on the abandonment of this piece. Now, we then put in place the access easement and the lease. And the anticipation at the time and the best practice at the time, and honestly still today, is that when you develop these projects around streets, you continue to allow vehicular traffic. But as Silver Spring is often proven to be the case, Silver Spring was the exception to the rule. And we learned, living with the project, managing it on a regular basis for over an extended period of time, that really the best use there was not allowing vehicles through there. At first, we closed it off to vehicles during the weekends. And then 7-8 years ago, we closed it off almost entirely to vehicles. And it has functioned more as a public plaza than a street for those last 7 or 8 years. We still have to provide emergency access. We've had events where we've had cars and trucks and things like that go up and down that street to provide staging and setup and things like that. But for the most part, it has been a pedestrian plaza. And so the intent today is to abandon complete this abandonment really that was started 20 plus years ago, and then change the provisions of the lease and the easement, the access easement, to allow us to make improvements to the project that have recently been approved by the planning board. Those improvements, about three years ago or so, we as the owners, we continue to own the project throughout this entire period. Folger, Pratt, and Peterson, we are both long-term owners of real estate, and downtown Silver Spring is a prime example of that. We saw that the project needed a refresh, and we saw that just physically there were things that were wearing out from pedestrian traffic through there, and that takes a toll over time. A wonderful problem to have, but a challenge nonetheless. We also saw that there was tremendous disruption and change going on in the world of retail, and we've seen that. I don't need to explain all that. The retail world is changing dramatically. We've seen much more food than we had ever anticipated, restaurants. We've seen the advent of online retailing and the impact that's had on retail. And so we started working together with Peterson, Folger, Pratt, and our consultants, including Oculus and others, to really look at what were the challenges, what were the things that we could do to enhance the position of downtown Silver Spring and continue to really make it a place for the community to come and, as we said, dwell, spend time there. So we engaged Oculus and, as I said, other consultants, and we developed a plan. We worked through that plan with Park and Planning, went through a site plan amendment and a project plan amendment. We didn't change the density. We didn't change any square footage. We didn't add density. It was really a change to the site plan, to the surface areas, including Ellsworth. And we felt like those changes, while we would still provide for access for emergency vehicles and vehicles for special events and things like that, we wanted to close Ellsworth to vehicular traffic and permanently, and then use that space and enhance that space so that we create a much more attractive, viable, vibrant, exciting experience for people who come to downtown Silver Spring. And so that plan was approved recently by Park and Planning. And so this abandonment is really an effort on our part to put in place the requirements of the project plan and the site plan that was just recently approved. In going through both this abandonment process and the site plan and project plan review, All of these things were the materials, the design, the whole approach. It was reviewed by DPS. It was reviewed by the county DOT, by the fire marshal, by virtually everybody. And questions were asked, and those questions were answered. And the fact that the street has been closed for so many years, there's been no adverse impact on traffic or anything around the area there. And in fact, we actually got some complaints recently from some people because we've been allowing cars to drive down Ellsworth on a temporary basis to allow for curbside pickup. And we actually had a lot of complaints from the community about us allowing any cars in there at all. So the abandonment really is to allow us to move forward. We will amend the access easement to allow for the closure of the street and to allow for the construction and the installation of the improvements and the fixtures and furniture that we will be installing. We'll continue to use and program this space as public space. There will be an ongoing calendar of events and programming there that will serve the entire community. This is a project we're very proud of. It's a project that came about because of the leadership of the then county executive, Doug Duncan, and the county council. It came about more than anything because this is what the community really wanted in downtown Silver Spring. And based on the long history that we've now had on nearly 20 years of operating this project, we are very proud to say that we think that we've done just that, that I think we've met or exceeded all of our goals and all of our aspirations for really creating a new heart for the Silver Spring community. And they've embraced it and we've embraced them. And we're very proud of what we have done there. And this is another step in continuing to manage and improve and enhance downtown Silver Spring to the benefit of the community there. Don?
Well, you know, before this, Barbara, again, before Don goes forward, perhaps we could pull up the PowerPoint that we did. I believe it's with the gentleman that's doing the IT.
Yes, which exhibit is that?
That would be, let's see, I got it down, the exhibits. That would be the,
One second, it's a long list.
yeah. So I'm looking at the list. It was like
Their PowerPoint presentation is Exhibit AB.
Yeah.
AB.
Yes, that's
Yes. Okay. If you could bring that up.
It wouldn't let me open Exhibit A because it was corrupt or not a file type that's supported.
I'm sorry. Oh, my apologies. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yes.
All right, one second. All right. Okay. One second. And all right.
Yep.
Okay. Well, if you go to the first slide here, yeah, that just is the general area in the heavy lawn project. Here is the areas to be abandoned, and it shows you in yellow what was previously abandoned, basically, and what is subject to the access easement, and the pinkish color is the upper Ellsworth. And immediately to the north is a little strip that is owned by the county. And that is what Mr. Folger was talking about, that once the pink area is abandoned, the county will own in fee the entire yellow and pink area, and that it will then restructure the easement for the purposes that have been specified in the abandonment. Next slide, Tiara. Is, okay, that's just the original dedication, so we can flip to the next one. That is the area, that is the deed establishing that the county does in fact own the strip that will not be abandoned and therefore has the right to obtain the fee of the abandoned Upper Ellsworth. Next slide. This is when the county then, after the abandonment that has been mentioned in 1999, this was the abandonment plat showing the area that was in fact abandoned that corresponds with the you just saw. And it shows Ellsworth Drive remaining, which we're calling Upper Ellsworth, and that will be abandoned except for the strip that is roughly various 5 feet to the north. On the next slide, yeah, that's just existing conditions. A little hard to read, but you can go to it and see existing conditions in the abandoned areas. The next slide is just a description of the access easement. And the next slide is the same thing. It is the description and sketch. And the next slide, same thing for the area to be abandoned. That is Upper Ellsworth, showing again the area that the Montgomery County owns to the north. And the next slide. That's where Don Hoover comes in. Mr. Hoover will then address the from this point on.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Don Hoover of Oculus. We are the landscape architects responsible for developing the design ideas for the project. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the design and primarily try to focus on Ellsworth Drive right away and the role that it plays in the renovation of downtown Silver Spring. As Brian mentioned, our goal for the project is to refresh and further activate the public realm of downtown Silver Spring. If you've been out to the site recently, really starting last fall, you may have seen that the building facades are being painted with bright colors. A collection of murals by international artists have been installed, and there's more to come on that front. The idea for Ellsworth is to transform the street from a vehicular space into a pedestrian street. It will still provide fire and emergency vehicle access, and it can be opened up to vehicles for special events and for maintenance, but its primary function will be for pedestrian-oriented activities. Just to check a box on some technical issues, the roadbed itself, which was designed to carry heavy vehicular loads, will remain in place. The proposed improvements will be applied to the surface and will not impact the street's ability to support vehicles. The storm drainage system, including the existing curb and gutters, will remain the same, except for changes at both ends of the street where we're proposing to raise the grades of the sidewalks to be flush with adjacent sidewalks, basically creating a raised table at Fenton and as well at the alley near Georgia. Bikes will be able to move freely throughout the entire space. A designated bike lane has been provided on the sidewalk along the south side of Ellsworth. We've worked with planning staff to develop exactly what that designation would look like, and it complies with the bicycle master plan and approved by planning staff. Go to the next slide. So this is a photograph of Ellsworth today. And as Bry said, the street has been closed for years, but it still looks and feels like a space for vehicles, not for pedestrians. And that's really the primary mission of this, is to transform that space. You can go to the next slide. So this is a rendering of Ellsworth with the new improvements, and this is standing about halfway down the street looking towards Fenton at the end. So as you can see, the sidewalks, the paving for the sidewalks will remain the same. We've broadened some of the planting at the base of the trees, but you can see a collection of activities, which I'll show you in plan view in the next slide, of these, a collection of rooms along the edge of Ellsworth where we have permanent installations of a number of different activities. And then Ellsworth itself, at this end of the street, we're proposing to lay down turf for folks to lounge or to have yard games, keeping it a very flexible space. As you can see, the existing curb and gutter remains as is, so the drainage system will not be changed as a result of this. Next slide. So I'm showing you this just to give you an idea of what all the different pieces and parts are to the project. Today, when you go out there, there's two things that activate this entire space. One is retail. It's a great activation of public spaces with, and in this case, with outdoor dining. And then there's an interactive water feature, and that's basically it. That's what makes the place sing, if you will. So with this new proposal, you can see a list of new programming elements. In the main plaza, we're putting a fountain back in. It's going to be accompanied by a piece of artwork. There is a stage, there's different types of public seating, there's a community chalkboard. The idea is to insert all these different types of activities so that it's not just for young kids with the interactive water feature, but really hitting young kids, middle-aged people, old people, just providing a whole range of different types of activities, including additional outdoor seating. So you can see on the list, the kiddie horse ride, or workstations with internet access, ping pong tables, porch swings, bistro seating, new cafe seating. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's being proposed with the project, in particular what's happening, in and along Ellsworth. So in closing, I'll just say that in our opinion, Ellsworth Drive right away is central to the success of this space, to transform it from a street to a, full-on central public space. And as Bry said, sort of building the heart of downtown Silver Spring.
One question, Don, that's been raised in some of the letters is whether the disabled people will be able to circulate through the space if it is in fact abandoned and the design is implemented as shown. Could you address that for a second?
Sure. The short answer is yes. In fact, we've installed additional wheelchair access ramps along the curbs along Ellsworth to allow freer access, into the street itself. What's shown on here is the turf area, moving plan west. That is all curbless through that zone, so people can move across the plaza. The turf itself is not being put down like an athletic field with cushion under it. It is an infill material. So we're using a short pile turf that's adhered to the roadbed. So wheelchairs will be able to maneuver on that freely.
I would just point out to the hearing examiner that our petition that's dated April 20, 2020, does in fact provide an analysis of why this proposal does implement the recommendations of the sector plan for downtown Silver Spring, as well as the 2018 bicycle master plan that Mr. Hoover has mentioned, the facilities that are being employed to have a designated area for bicyclers to pass through the property. So last question, Mr. Hoover, do you want to address once the abandonment is granted, what the access will be to the garage that is called the Wayne Avenue garage for the property?
I'm sorry, Barbara, did you want me to address that?
If you could, just from a landscape planning standpoint.
Yeah, sure. So from Georgia, Ellsworth Drive, the portion that is shown in white, that will be an active roadway. It is one way, the alley has always been one way going into the garage. So that will remain the same. There was parking on the north side of Ellsworth that is being removed, and the sidewalks widened through that zone, primarily because it was very awkward for people to get to those parking spaces. They basically had to come down and do a U-turn to park there. So the short answer to your question is that access to the garage is unchanged by this plan.
Thank you. And that will be an issue that is covered when the changes to the access easement are done, if this abandonment is granted. So we will have that same direct access into the garage. So unless there's anything else, Mr. Hoover, we can move on to Mr. Amato. All right, Jeff Amato, then, if he is still with us, is...
Yep, I'm here, Barbara.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeff. And if you could, you are a registered civil engineer in the state of Maryland?
Yep, that is correct.
And
my name is Jeff Amato. I'm the Director of Engineering at the FICA Maryland office. And, Barbara, Brian, and Don have almost hit every point. I think the only thing that I could add is a little discussion on the existing utilities.
yes, please.
There are existing street lights and water and sewer mains within the access area, and also the Upper Ellsworth, which we are preparing easement documents for. So we are going to be granting a PUE for the street lights, and we're also going to be granting a water sewer easement to WSC for the existing facilities.
Okay.
And I think, as mentioned previously, the gas has already been abandoned, so there's no need for the gas.
And some of this right-of-way will, of course, be owned by Montgomery County. So similar to what was done in the first abandonment, some of these easements, to the extent they need to be confirmed by Montgomery County, will be granted by Montgomery.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Then you have reviewed all the letters that Tara has mentioned from the from the utility companies and their various conditions of approval.
That is correct. We are in the process of working with WSSC to determine the easement width. And so we're going to move forward on that. And we're also going to cover the streetlights under a PUE.
So you see no problems with the accommodating the requests of these utility companies?
That is correct. No issues.
Or with
And then there's an existing storm drain system in Upper Ellsworth, which will remain unchanged and basically function as it does today.
All right, then I think the only other exhibits here were on access. If you could flip to the next, I think, last two exhibits.
Could you give me the name of the exhibit that you're looking for? It's not in the PowerPoint, correct?
Is there two access exhibits?
There are, this is Ian with VICA. There are two sheets past this slide right here.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. It's two sheets past this.
Gotcha.
Okay, sorry. Slipped in a cover sheet. Yeah, this was just, and Jeff can add anything he wants to this, but it was just an effort to show in the hatched area where the, well, if you go to the next one.
I think Barbara, I think it's the next slide that
Yeah,
kind of shows it a little better.
It shows it better, yeah. So there's one last slide and two, I think.
1 second.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it. So the what's kind of shown in blue, I think it's blue on my screen, is the access easement that we're going to be, preparing a sketch and description for the essential vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. And then the purplish area on Lower Ellsworth is the access easement that we're preparing an easement sketch and description for the vehicle access to the Wayne garage from Georgia Avenue.
So I think that basically concludes the case for us. If there is any testimony that's allowed in about the turf, we would like to come back and perhaps discuss that for a minute at the end if the hearing examiner would give us that accommodation.
Yes, that's fine. Are there any other witnesses that you're going to call to speak on behalf of this abandonment?
No, I think it's covered in our petition, and I would also call the examiner's attention to the very thorough analysis that Park and Planning did on the abandonment that gives a lot of background data and findings that are helpful, I think, to the case as well. The only other thing is in the site plan report and on the site plan and the project plan and in the resolutions approving them, there is also a good deal of discussion on the purpose of compliance with the design with the sector plan, the bicycle plan, and why this is an advancement of the goals of those plans to have this design that is implemented through the abandonment. So we would ask the examiner to take those into account as well.
Yeah, thank you. I will, and I certainly want to talk about the short pile turf that you made reference to, that you said you were going to speak on later on. I'm certainly interested in that. I would like to go back to Exhibit K5. I have one or two questions on that with regard to the bicycle path, the bicycle pathway that's proposed in conjunction with that concept.
Okay. Well, perhaps Sierra could bring that back up, and perhaps Don, you could be prepared to answer anything on that.
Yes, yeah, sure.
Okay, 1 second.
Are we pulling the plan up? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I was actually going to draw our attention back to the exhibit that you showed. I believe it was called out as K5, but if the plan is being shown, that's fine too. You mentioned that the bicycle pathway was going to be located on the south side, and so I had some questions about that. They may be covered in the immensity of the documents, but I wanted to just ask a couple of questions for the record.
Yeah, sure.
Flip down to K5 towards the middle. Keep going. There we go.
Yeah. And K5 is fine. Just that you mentioned that the bicycle facilities would be on the south side. Two things: what's the approximate width of the bicycle pathway, and are we talking about bi-directional bicycle traffic on that segment?
It is, the pathway is being marked with medallions, not like showing the edges. It was, in talking with planning staff, we all agreed that we don't want, we did not want to have a pathway that had edges marked on it. The width of the free area, I want to say it's 10 feet. But according to the bicycle master plan, the bikeway on this street is not connecting to anything. It's really just coming from Fenton into this space. And so again, with discussions with planning, it was more to be an indication to pedestrians that bicycles are in this area.
Well, and you should know that the sidewalk on the south side of the street is quite a bit wider than the sidewalk on the north side of the street. That was done originally in anticipation of heavier pedestrian traffic, and we just had depths on those retail stores that were just too great. So we made that sidewalk quite a bit wider on the south side than the sidewalk on the north side, which is more normally a more normal dimension. So there's room there for both pedestrians and bikes.
Okay, thank you.
Ian, do you know the width of that area?
I'm reviewing plans right now to see if I can determine a dimension.
Okay, when you find one, perhaps you can add that to the discussion.
Thank you. All right, just to be clear, you mentioned that there are no other witnesses that you'd like to call to speak on this, on regard of this abandonment, right? Very
No,
good.
not until, perhaps the end on that one.
Very good. So with regard to this next portion of the hearing and public comment, are there comments that are desired to be made on this limited abandonment petition? And so Tiara and company, do we have a protocol for who's going to be permitted to provide their comments and in what sequence that's going to occur?
I have an order if you'd like me to go ahead and call names in the order that I have them. They're not in the order in which they were received, so I just want to make that statement prior to calling the list of names.
Okay, that may be easier rather than having to grab hands out of the air. So let's proceed in that wise.
Yes, sir. Now the first.
And please keep in mind, again, I want to reiterate that I'm asking or directing you all to relegate your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes, and I will be attending strictly to this time limit. I apologize, Tiara.
No worries. The first individual I have is Mark Pastor. All right. Does anyone see and or hear Mark Pastor? Joshua, can you check to see if Mark Pastor is here?
Yes, one moment.
Thank you. I am going to,
I do not see Mark Pastor here.
okay. The next individual I have is Diana Conway, and I apologize in advance, everyone, if I mispronounce your name.
So again, just to provide a little bit more context, there was a request to announce approximately how long the wait time was going to be based on the testimony. So I think it might be beneficial for us to maybe call out 5 individuals to say, hey, these 5 people are on the docket, and then call them out individually as we go. And that way, if the person's name is not listed in that first 5-person docket, then they know they probably have about a half an hour to wait or something like that. Oh, not a half an hour, 15 minutes.
That's perfectly fine. The first 5 people have been added, starting with to the chat, starting with Diana Conway. If you'd like, for those who are on the call,
Yeah,
I can
thank you.
read the next names. My apologies. The first is Diana Conway. Next will be Sheldon Fishman. Following Mr. Fishman, Ray Britch, B-R-I-T-C-H. Following Mr. Ray is Michael Madge. After Mr. Madge will be Kathleen Michels.
Thank you, Tiara. Ms. Conway?
Hi, thank you. I especially want to thank Tiara, who has been endlessly patient with those of us over the age of 50 trying to figure out how this works. You've got some serious encryption. So thank you. And I'm here today representing the Women's Democratic Club. I'm the president of the club. We are 600 politically active women and men focused on issues that predominantly affect women and children. We are in support of the abandonment with conditions, and the condition is the exclusion of synthetic turf. My testimony will be submitted shortly, but I'll go through quickly and then go back. The Department of Environmental Protection has issued serious concerns about the use of synturf in a letter of July 13th. The Planning Board, by a majority, opposed the use of synturf in its letter of July 30th, and the other 2 members of the Planning Board were silent on the merits of using synthetic turf, stating only that it did not belong in their forum as an issue. We believe the MS4 permits and the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits will be violated by installation of synthetic turf, including the plastic, the backing, and the untold gallons of glue that will be required to stick it to the existing roadbed and to continually go back as it breaks down and add glue to that. An additional toxic load will be the flame retardants, biocides, disinfectants, sterilizers, and notwithstanding airy statements about attentive cleanings using unnamed common household cleansers, the record is quite clear that synturf needs aggressive cleaning for common events like spit, sweat, snot, blood, vomit, bird feces, dog feces, sticky food and drinks, cigarettes, gum, Thanksgiving parade candy. Studies show that synturf is a terrific medium for growing MRSA, a staph infection that is resistant to antibiotics, and it gets more so as it gets older. And the CDC has told us that plastics like synthetic turf can support COVID for up to 3 days. The second major objection to synthetic turf is the near certainty that it contains lead. We've known since 2007, when 3 cases were brought by the state of California, that The plastic carpet itself, not the infill used on fields, contains up to 5,000 parts per million of lead. The industry has failed in the intervening 13 years to loudly proclaim it has a lead-free product. The CDC and American Academy of Pediatrics have said there is absolutely no safe level of lead exposure, and any claim to the
30
contrary
seconds, Ms. Conway. Thank you.
is illusory. You also have PFAS, which is the toxic chemical of the day. The synthetic turf gets reliably hotter than adjoining blacktop, making it less attractive, not more attractive as a place to hang out. Flammability is not at issue. The fire department where I'm sitting right now in Massachusetts actually issued a request for a fire break around the proposed synthetic turf because they're worried about flames spreading from the turf if it gets vandalized or catches fire to the adjoining woods. It's a petroleum product. It is inherently flammable.
Thank you,
there's
Ms.
an
Conway.
ADA issue, and manufacturers indicated it's not appropriate for this use.
Thank you, Ms. Conway. I appreciate your testimony. I apologize for being so abrupt and having to cut you off. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, please remember that any additional comments that anyone on this call has can be submitted during the comment period to Ms. Tiara McCray. Who's next, Tiara?
I'm muted, my apologies. I have Mr. Sheldon Fishman next.
Mr. Fishman.
Thank you very much. Again, I want to basically echo what Diana said about Ms. McCray. Ms. McCray, could we put up page 2 of my testimony, please? And she has done a terrific job in supporting public comments, and I very much appreciate it. I won't repeat anything that Diana said, except that when she referred to the planning board, their letter to you of July 30th, which probably is attachment M, said specifically that the question of synthetic turf, they're looking to you for an answer, and they chose not to approve it, the synthetic turf, but they're looking to you and the county. Ms. McCray, can you put up my testimony?
I sent Caleb a message. It's Exhibit AE, page 114.
Yes, stand by.
Thank you.
And so basically, my family has lived in Silver Spring for over 40 years, so we appreciate the redevelopment of downtown Silver Spring, and we and very much support the redevelopment of downtown Silver Spring. It will be very bad. It will be an improvement that we support with a condition, and the condition is that you not put synthetic turf there. And basically, in one sentence, my testimony is that I agree with the Department of Environmental Protection that says a more environmentally preferable alternative should be utilized. They're right. And with that, I yield the rest of my time. I appreciate how busy you guys are. Thank you.
Mr. Fishman, thank you very much. You're on mute, Tiara.
It definitely changes things. The next is Mr. Ray Rich, and I apologize if I've mispronounced your name, sir.
Mr. Bridge on the call.
Joshua,
Checking 1 moment.
thank you.
In the meantime,
Up next, we'll have Mr. Madge. If Mr. Madge can be prepared to speak next.
I do not see Mr. Bridge on the call, so you can
thank
move
you,
on.
Josh. Mr. Mash.
Here. Can you show me on the screen?
Yes, sir, we hear you.
Did Mr. Fishman? Let's start.
I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat your request?
you show me full screen? Show my face full screen here.
Yeah, Mr. Madge, we can see you.
I do not have something to show full screen other than holding it in my hand, but I would like to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Madge, did you have a display that you wanted us to see? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Your video has been pinned, Mr. Madge.
No, it should be on.
We can see you. Yes, sir.
You can see me.
Yes, sir.
Have you submitted your exhibit to this office so that we might include it in the presentation? Is that what you're looking at for us to see your exhibit?
I just want people to see it. I will hold it up here now. So I'm going to refer to it. Can you see what I'm holding?
Yes,
up?
sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm testifying. Okay, if you start the clock, I'm testifying on behalf of the ACLU of Maryland, Montgomery County chapter. And we oppose this abandonment unless it is revised and amended. We wish to save the Silver Spring Fountain and ensure that Ellsworth Drive is not the next step to gentrifying downtown Silver Spring. The Downtown Silver Spring organization has asked the county to let them make major changes to Ellsworth Drive. Unfortunately, the plans include ripping out the beautiful mosaic fountain that neighborhood kids have used as a summer wading pool for over 15 years, covering the street with synthetic turf, which would keep young neighborhood skaters and skateboarders from practicing their skills there, as they do now, and obstructing the bike path, as shown in renderings that I have seen. Downtown Silver Spring is clearly trying to attract a more upscale, genteel clientele to Ellsworth Drive. But that's how gentrification happens, pushing people of color and lower income community members out of the area, reducing the rich diversity that makes Silver Spring what it is today, reducing the options for fountain waving, for skating, and for bike traffic. These reductions run counter to Montgomery County's proclaimed ideals of diversity and inclusion. We ask you to, 1, save the fountain and keep it as a wading pool for public use. 2, do not use synthetic turf on Ellsworth Drive. Have you ever tried skating on synthetic turf? 3, require that the section of Ellsworth Drive in the Executive Order 8420 be kept open for skaters and skateboarders to practice their skills.
30 seconds, Mr. Madge. Thank you.
Maintain an unobstructed bike path. 5, prepare a racial equity and social justice impact statement of the type mentioned in Bill 2719 for the entire project. Let's keep Silver Spring and the county equitable, inclusive, and welcome for all people. We thank you for your attention. Our request is accompanied by a petition with over 350 signatures as of this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Madge. We appreciate your testimony.
To do these necessary changes.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we will have Allison Gillespie.
Allison.
Is she on mute?
She was.
Yes, I've requested to unmute her. Ms. Gillespie, would you just accept that request?
I'm here.
All right, great.
Okay,
I'm
great.
here. Yeah, but I'm here as the phone number because of audio trouble. So my phone number also has my name. I hope that's clear. I had chatted with you about it privately on the chat. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You can proceed.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Sorry, I had started to speak. I'm sorry about that. I wanted to let everyone know I've lived here for 24 years. I'm glad to see the resurrection of Silver Spring. I've been grateful for what has happened, and I think it's been wonderful. Over this last spring and summer, I have been working very hard on open streets efforts and working with many DOT people on trying to reuse some unused street space for efforts like what was just described on Ellsworth. Ellsworth means a lot to me. My mom used to live 2 blocks before she passed away last year. She was in her 80s. I used to put her in a wheelchair and wheel her up and down Ellsworth, and each of the businesses got to know us and would welcome us personally and make an effort to make my mom comfortable, even as she had very severe dementia. Some of the street musicians would even start playing Pink Panther because they knew that was her favorite song. So Ellsworth means a lot to me. While COVID has hit our community, we have been trying very, very hard to work with the Peterson Company to get what other communities have, which is a streetscape that is full of tables, socially distanced. The Bethesda Urban Partnership has done this very successfully. Wheaton has done it very successfully. Rockville has done it very successfully. Tacoma Park has done it very successfully. Silver Spring could have done it successfully, but Peterson refused. And they blocked us doing anything like that, refused to even consider it, were not very good community members during the process. There's tons of room. Yes?
Yeah, I'm trying to make a determination on, you're talking about. Yeah.
I am. I understand, Michael. I'm worried as far as Peterson being a good overseer of this space in the way that's described. I understand that they're saying they want to keep it open, but it seems to me that what they're really concerned about is profit making and not being a very good community member. At this point, I would love to see a lot of the plans that are here, but I have serious concerns about their management of the abandonment as it's described, given what they have, the kind of community member they've been this summer. I would like to see downtown Silver Spring continue to thrive, but I don't see anything other than Peterson continuing to survive in this plan and in the way they've acted this summer. I'm by no means a NIMBY. I welcome development. Okay, I gotcha. I think that what's happened in downtown Silver Spring has been great, but I think that Peterson has gotten a little cavalier, and I wonder about having some sort of oversight to this abandonment should we give it over to Peterson completely. I hope you'll take that into consideration, and I'll be letting the council know these same concerns. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Again, I want to caution us to make sure that our comments are in discussion specifically towards this issue and the limited abandonment of Ellsworth Drive. So again, I'm looking to be a little bit more stringent in trying to make sure that we focus our comments on that and not on some other radial issues. So anyway, let's be forewarned. All right, who's next?
I have Miss Kathleen Michels.
Is she in the first group of 5 or 6, or is she in the next segment?
She's in the first group.
Okay, great, thank you. Is that Miss Michaels or?
Michels, I believe, Kathleen.
Yes, thank you very much. If I could start?
You may.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Kathleen Michaels, a resident of the area for over 30 years, a public health scientist and mother of 2 boys. And I'd like to thank the hearing examiner and Ms. McCrae for her endless patience. As a family, we are familiar with this area through all its iterations. I am also familiar with the synthetic turf carpet material proposed to be glued down on the asphalt. We support the majority of the Planning Board and the Department of Environmental Protection in asking you to please allow abandonment only if the synthetic turf carpet or similar materials are prohibited. The Planning Board recommended against synthetic turf plastic carpeting because of heat, health, and sanitation contamination concerns. One of the issues identified is the difficulty in cleaning a plastic tufted outdoor carpet when people with animals and food and occasional vehicles will be on it. all the time, unlike a plastic carpeted sports field, which allows none of these and in fact explicitly excludes pets, food, and drink. The Department of Environmental Protection has also submitted recommendations against synthetic turf as not appropriate for this use, in part since it adds to the physical and chemical pollution load from this site instead of improving it. The only rationale that Folger Pratt has been able to give for gluing a plastic bladed carpet onto Ellsworth Avenue is the fake visual illusion of a soft, cool, healthy space for people to congregate. The reality is the exact opposite. Plastic synthetic turf carpeting, especially glued to anything hard, is hard, hotter than the asphalt it is glued to, toxic, unsanitary, and polluting. According to current studies, it will leach chemicals and shed tons of microplastic and associated pathogens and pollutants. A dangerous illusion indeed. The MS4 stormwater regulations do not allow purposely adding new point sources of stormwater pollution. And the existence of a stormwater facility is not a license to pollute. Water quality control stormwater facilities are intended for background pollution from non-point sources, which are not currently possible to prevent. The developer has publicly posted misleading and incorrect information in response about cleaning synthetic turf. They say they can safely wash and clean the carpet with things like mineral spirits and detergents, and they say that the existing stormwater
30
facilities
seconds, Ms. Michaels.
take care of additional purposeful plastic and chemical pollutants from this site. This is simply false. The stormwater regulations are very clear that any added non-rainwater discharges are not allowed. Any chemical and other than those used for firefighting activities is 100% illegal, even if a stormwater facility, and especially if a stormwater facility is present. There are so many downsides to synthetic turf and no positives except illusion. I am here to remind you of the power of illusion and to ask you to protect us from its dangers. Please approve abandonment only if
Ms. Michaels.
synthetic turf or other similar polymer materials is prohibited. Thank you.
And again, I'm going to make a summary judgment on this aspect. I understand that many of you may be concerned about the issue of synthetic turf, but that really doesn't have much, if anything, to do with whether or not we're in support or opposed to this limited abandonment. The type of material that can be used is something that can be addressed, but the focus of this hearing is on whether or not the limited abandonment of Ellsworth Drive for bicycle and pedestrian and emergency vehicles as opposed to our typical traffic is what's on the table now. So if you have comments or if you're looking to submit comments during this hearing that talk about your opposition to the synthetic turf application, I'm going to ask you to hold those comments in abeyance. You may submit them during the comment period, but for the purpose of this call and the purpose of this hearing, our focus should be on the abandonment itself. Who's next, Tiara?
The next group of 5 will be Xavier, Lisa, Carrie, Ann, and Trudy, starting with Xavier. Mr. Xavier.
Thank you.
Josh, can you see if Mr. Xavier is on the call?
I do not see Mr. Xavier on the call.
All right. Next up, we have Miss Lisa.
I don't see Lisa Haynes on the call either.
Thank you. Next, we have Miss Carrie.
I don't see Carrie on the call.
All right.
Next, we have Miss Ann.
Ms. Vorse is on the line. If you could please unmute your phone.
Josh, could you send her an invitation to unmute herself?
She is unmuted. Ms. Vorse, can you hear us?
I'll see her. Okay.
Do we want to come back to her?
I'll leave a note. Next, we have Miss Trudy.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shruti Bhatnagar, and I'm of nearly 6,000 members to share Sierra Club's concerns related to installation of synthetic turf and urge you to keep those concerns in the forefront of your decision-making for the abandonment of the right-of-way on Ellsworth Drive. The Sierra Club supports the majority of Planning Board's comment and recommendation and requests that the approval of abandonment be contingent on not allowing use of synthetic turf and requiring a more watershed-friendly alternative to synthetic turf and its microplastic and chemical pollutants. The Sierra Club Montgomery County and Maryland chapter are opposed to synthetic turf because it poses a threat to both public health and the environment. Some of our concerns include water pollution from microplastic as it degrades, composition of glue attached to the turf to the asphalt, chemicals recommended for its cleaning, increase in stormwater runoff that would carry additional pollutants, and whether it is compatible with the existing stormwater management facility. Flammability of this petroleum-based product and the large generation of synthetic turf, which is plastic waste that must be disposed every 8 to 10 years. Other concerns will be outlined in our detailed written testimony, but we have a special concern regarding this project's compatibility with the existing stormwater management facility, given the fact that increases in heavy precipitation events are already occurring as a result of climate change and which are not factored into current quotes for the design of stormwater or other infrastructure. Abandonment of right-of-way also reduces the county's opportunities for increasing stormwater management capacity through green infrastructure project. The addition of synthetic turf on top of the existing impervious surface would be a missed opportunity to advance the county's obligations for stormwater management under the MS4 permit that requires removal of impervious surfaces and treatment of stormwater runoff in older neighborhoods such as downtown Silver Spring, which were not built to treat stormwater to the maximum extent practicable. Green infrastructure is an approach that enables more stormwater to either infiltrate soil or evaporate from vegetation that intercepts it before it reaches the ground, thereby reducing polluted runoff. In addition, it provides many other benefits associated with actual green spaces. With the recognition by the County Council that we are in a climate emergency, it is critical that climate considerations, both extreme heat periods and increases in heavy precipitation events, are considered in all development, planning, and decision-making. We hope you agree that adapting new development projects are some of the best opportunities the county has to increase the climate resilience. The proposed synthetic turf in downtown Silver Spring would only reduce climate resiliency. As you review the abandonment of Ellsworth Drive, please keep these concerns that have been shared with you in record to installation of synthetic turf at the forefront of your decision making. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shruti.
Our next group of 5, Robert Peters, Miss Sylvia, Diana, Brett, and Annie, starting with Mr. Peters.
Hi, I'm wondering, after hearing the comments about the artificial turf, if you couldn't just paint that section of the street green. So something that'd be easily washable. I mainly wanted to, though, really request that the fountain there is, to me, the highlight of the current development, and its replacement by something much smaller. I just love seeing the kids dance around, and I think we would be missing something if that's replaced. Third, I just was wondering, I assume the cost of this would be passed on to the shops in the area, but would that be a significant increase in cost? Would it drive any current shops away? That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Peters.
Up next, we have Miss Sylvia.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a statement. My name is Sylvia Tognetti. I'm speaking today as an individual, but I also serve as the water issue lead for the Montgomery County group of the Sierra Club, and I contributed to the more detailed statement that was provided by the Sierra Club. I just wanted to make a very brief statement to emphasize that abandonment is against the county's interest unless it's for the purposes of advancing stormwater management goals, because the county has a regulatory obligation to retrofit older areas to improve management of stormwater and to comply with their stormwater permit. And redevelopment is the best opportunity to do this. Right-of-way sites are ideal because the county owns these, and they are also the best sites for green infrastructure projects that reduce rather than merely detain stormwater runoff. Green infrastructure provides many benefits associated with actual as opposed to artificial green spaces, and it makes no sense to forego this opportunity. So basically abandoning for purposes of gluing synthetic turf to the pavement would take the county backwards, and therefore it should be contingent on advancing stormwater management goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Tognetti. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Ms. Diana.
Ms. Zuckerman.
You might need to give Ms. Zuckerman a moment. She said she was on another call. She's trying to work simultaneously.
I can add Ms. Zuckerman to the end and we can come back to her to give her some time.
Why don't you do the next one and come back to her?
Okay. Next on our list, we have Brett. Is Mr. Brett on the call? All right.
I don't see Brett.
Ms. Zuckerman, are you prepared to make your comment? You're on mute, Ms. Zuckerman.
Still no?
Josh, can you send her a request to unmute?
I did. Let's go down the list. I sent her a chat. When she responds, I'll cut you off and let you know.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay. Next on our list is Miss Annie.
Ms. Tolkien.
Hello.
Hi,
Can
Ms.
you hear me?
Tolkien.
Hi. Great. I'll jump right in. So I'm Annie Tolkien. I'm a resident of Silver Spring. I've lived here for about 4 years. In my professional life, I work to support access and inclusion for people with disabilities, specifically people with physical disabilities and health conditions. As a community member and a member of the county's Pedestrian Master Planning Committee, I bring this lens to my advocacy in Silver Spring and to this discussion today. So I'm speaking with you today to ask that the county only abandon Ellsworth Drive, if synthetic turf is not allowed there. In addition to the numerous and valid environmental concerns around synthetic turf in the street space, I believe there's also an Americans with Disabilities Act ADA compliance issue with the use of synthetic turf. The ADA requires that the surface be, quote, firm, stable, and slip resistant. And although the developers claim that the turf is ADA compliant, I have serious concerns about the turf meeting those compliance standards. I was listening to Mr. Hoover and the petitioner mention access ramps and curbless entry when they were doing their presentation earlier. And they appear to maintain that wheelchairs would be able to move freely on the turf, but they didn't provide any data to support that aside from their word. So I would maintain that turf material would pose challenges for people using mobility aids and devices. I have a few examples. So just thinking through this, strollers and grocery carts takes more effort to push your cart through the turf. Walkers, you can't simply slide forward when you're on turf. Canes and crutches, they don't anchor well to surfaces that are not uniform, and the turf would provide some barriers to that. Manual scooters, so if someone has a temporary injury or if they're healing and they have their foot up and they're trying to wheel around, it's harder to manage that on uneven and textured surfaces. Silver Spring prides itself on diversity, and disability is an aspect of diversity. People with disabilities are the largest minority group in the United States, and it's a group that anyone can join at any point in their lives. So if our county believes in equal access, then we can't allow developers to implement plans that would present a barrier to accessing goods and services. And that's why we can only allow the abandonment if the synthetic turf is not allowed there. The ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, just celebrated its 30th anniversary in July.
You have 30 seconds, Ms. Tolkien.
Got it. We all benefit from the ADA. So parents with strollers, the elderly, people with mobility impairments, people who are temporarily disabled. So we can't abandon public space that everybody can currently access and have that turned into a space that excludes. I think we can do better to create spaces that are equitable and universally designed. And I encourage the county to only abandon Ellsworth Drive if synthetic turf is not allowed there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tolkien.
Ms. Zuckerman, are you able to? We still cannot hear you.
Yeah, she said she was having issues with her connection.
Okay.
We're just going to move on for now. If we fix that, I'll let you know.
That's fine. All right, next we have the next two, which will be the final individuals that we have listed right now. We have Mr. Richard Lohr, and after Mr. Lohr will be Mr. Reed. Mr. Lohr.
Mr. Lohr.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I have two major concerns. My first concern is that it would appear that Montgomery County lacks the authority to approve the petition. Petitioner says, and properly so, that this proceeding is governed by section 4962 and 4963C. 4963C has two bases for the granting of the abandonment of a right of way. And they concede, of course, that the second one, having to do with the protection of health and safety and welfare of the residents, is inapplicable. We could all agree to that. But what they make the remarkable statement is that the right of way, the roadway, that is to say, is no longer necessary for present public use or anticipated public use. That's the only basis that they have to say that it should be abandoned. And obviously, the whole purpose of the abandonment is to increase public use, to increase the anticipated public use. So very simply, there is no authority to grant the requested abandonment. I'm aware that the abandonment was granted before, but it is clear that it was in excess of the statutory authority, which has not been changed in the interim. My second point, which I am very concerned about, is the protection of the First Amendment. The spaces that they own private entrepreneurial interest. What I'm concerned about is ensuring through conditions that the government will place upon the lessee that the right of free speech, assembly, and association on the property continue in a way that will not harm, for instance, people wanting to picket a company.
So Mr. Lohr, how does this relate to the abandonment?
Well, it is my belief that you just cannot simply abandon property. First of all, there'd be no statutory authority to do it, but if you did it, you have to do things to protect the interests of the public. Simply abandoning and saying, okay, you take it all over and you can put your synthetic turf in it, you can deny people the right to picket, to express themselves. These are not the values we have in our country. And I don't know if this is within your purview as the hearing examiner to address these issues. I honestly don't know. But I'm commending to you the idea that the government should place conditions on the use of this property that protect
Mr.
us
Lohr,
all.
yeah, your 3 minutes are up, and thank you. And
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Thank you. My pleasure to talk to you.
Next is Mr. Dan Reed.
Mr. Reed.
Hi. Hi, my name is Dan Reed. I grew up in downtown Silver Spring. I'm a homeowner here, and my partner and I both work in downtown Silver Spring. and I'm asking the County Council to reject the abandonment of Ellsworth Drive as currently proposed. Ellsworth has been a pedestrian street basically since it was rebuilt in 2004. It hosts big events like the Thanksgiving Parade, but it's also a space the community has made its own, whether it's kids playing on a splash pad or old friends running into each other, buskers, street performers, and skateboarders. As an urban planner, I like many of the applicant's proposals, particularly the new murals and the new street furniture discussed today. But I'm worried by the Peterson Company's indifference to the public's role in this public street. Over the past 16 years, Peterson Security has unfairly policed the public's access to this space, from attempting to arrest people for taking pictures or handing out campaign lit.
Mr. Reed.
Let me finish, please.
No, we want to make sure that our comments are focused on the abandonment and not on those radial issues.
Sir, if you listen, let me finish. I could do that. Thank you. You know, Peterson has brushed off the public's concerns about the redesign, including impeding accessibility for bicyclists or people using mobility devices, or that it's a ploy to kick skateboarders undesirables about. Residents also have a lot of concerns about Peterson's decision to allow curbside pickup for businesses on Ellsworth and their unwillingness to unwillingness to engage the community's desire to have a street like the one in Bethesda on Woodmont Avenue.
Mr. Reed, just a moment. Does somebody need to mute their microphone because they're talking over Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Do we have them covered, please? I apologize, Mr. Reed. Please go on.
Thank you. I feel Peterson's brushed off the public's concerns about accessibility on Ellsworth Drive, whether for bicyclists or people using mobility devices, and they've been completely indifferent to calls from residents and restaurants on Ellsworth Drive during the COVID-19 pandemic to have outdoor dining. You know, Councilmember Glass has done a great job of trying to reach out to Peterson about ensuring public's access to the space, and they have totally rejected attempts to work with us. One staff person from Peterson told us we should just be grateful they're investing in this community. And I find that really insulting. A lot of people pay good money to live in this community or to spend money enjoying the businesses on Ellsworth Drive while being in Ellsworth Drive itself. And yet they have completely restricted the public's use to this space, both in the long term and temporarily this year. And that's why I'm urging the council to reject this abandonment. This is a public street and should be treated as a public street with public input and full public discussion about what changes they want to make there and programming on there. If Peterson wants more control of this street, they must be accountable to the community that owns it and makes it such a great place to be. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
We have Ms. Vorse has returned back.
We also have Ms. Zuckerman.
Right. I have both noted.
Okay.
If Ms. Vorse, if you can hear us, if you could unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Apologies for my technical failure earlier. My name is Ann Vorse. I spend a lot of time trying to protect our county's water quality and the environment. I'm an active member of the Friends of Sligo Creek, our watershed group, although I'm testifying today as an individual. I've submitted written testimony as well. I joined with the environmental community and numerous residents of the county to oppose the abandonment application, AB 771, as it now stands. The reason for the opposition is that the application contains a proposal to carpet part of Ellsworth Drive with synthetic turf once the county agrees to abandon it. Why are synthetic turf concerns germane in this abandonment hearing? First, as I trust you are aware, on June 18th, the Planning Board voted to require the developer to come up with an alternative to synthetic turf for its certified site plan in case the County Council rejects AB 771 because of opposition to synthetic turf. I did not hear the applicant's attorney mention this today. Similarly, I did not see mention of this fact in the Planning Board's approved summary of the issues for its July abandonment hearing, but the issues are linked as part of the official record. But secondly, synthetic turf would not be installed on Ellsworth unless limited abandon is approved. So what the applicant is proposing to do to the road once it is abandoned is crucial. The county will be giving away a public good and in return should require that the public be protected. The need to protect the public through any abandonment decision is in fact embodied in the abandonment criterion in the Montgomery County Code. The principles implicit at the heart of the code are health, safety, and well-being of the public, Permitting the proposal to go forward with a synthetic turf component will increase risk for the health and well-being of the many people that will still be using Ellsworth and violate the Clean Water Act by having a negative impact on our waterways. An important part of the present or anticipated public use will continue and cannot be abandoned with their plan. Even if normal vehicle traffic will no longer be on Ellsworth, that is only part of the public use. People will still use Ellsworth. Water will still run off Ellsworth into the storm drain system, which will make its way quickly to Sligo Creek,
You have about
draining
30 seconds,
eventually
ma'am.
into the Anacostia and the Chesapeake Bay. The public will not be sufficiently protected if this proposal goes through. So on health and safety grounds, I urge you to recommend the following in your report, that the county executive recommend that the synthetic turf proposal be dropped from the certified site plan, that the developer be required instead to install environmentally friendly and healthy materials. I also urge you to reach out to the county's health officer, Dr. Travis Gales, to discuss the health and safety of
Thank
synthetic
you, ma'am.
turf,
I appreciate
and
you
that the
sharing your
views of
testimony.
DEP are taken into account. Thanks so much for listening to my testimony.
Thank you so much. Ms. McRae?
Next, we have Ms. Zuckerman.
Ah, that's right.
She is called in. Ms. Zuckerman, if you can go ahead and unmute your phone.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you-
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. I'm Dr. Diana Zuckerman. I'm president of the National Center for Health Research, and I've lived in Montgomery County for almost 30 years. I raised my family here. I know our county really well, and I know and I'm proud that we care very much about our planet and about our environment and about our health. And that's why I think the abandonment issue is really very tied in with the issue of protecting our environment. It just makes no sense for our county to restrict plastic bags in grocery stores or plastic straws in restaurants and then add to local and global pollution with these huge areas of plastic grass. I'm an epidemiologist, and most of the time I'm focusing on COVID-19. But when I hope COVID will be a distant memory, hopefully, we would still be living with artificial turf if we don't get smarter about these decisions. Just in brief, artificial turf is a petroleum-based product, and so are rubber surfaces that are often used as well. So these are both made from petroleum. They get very hot. They can be burned. They can burn. They can be doused with flame retardants, but those flame retardants are also toxic and can run off into Sligo Creek. The product isn't designed for traffic, not even for farmers market trucks. We certainly don't want dog walking there. If, unlike grass, which is all biodegradable, when dogs do their thing on artificial turf, it just stays there and bacteria can grow. So in summary, I just want to say that this is a huge issue for many of us, and that the abandonment really has to depend on proper stewardship and environmental protection, which is not what the developer seems to be interested in, I'm sorry to say. And it would be crazy to not only have this addition to the problem of climate change from our community, but also we would need to spend a lot of money on disposal because these carpets of artificial turf don't last very long.
30 seconds,
They
Dr.
start
Zuckerman.
looking ratty. Yes. Okay. And they're, and then they have to be disposed of. And how are we going to do that? So thanks very much for letting me speak. And I'm sorry it took so long to get this speaker to work. Thank you.
For your perseverance. Appreciate your testimony. Who's next?
We have no other participants that have been registered. If someone has registered and I have not called your name, please let me know. But I believe everyone has been given an opportunity to speak who is on the call.
All right, not having seen anyone identify themselves as a requester to speak. Is there anyone else on the call who would like to provide comments to this abandonment hearing? This will be your opportunity.
Mr. Paler, I have not received any additional chat requests for comment.
Nor have I.
Very good. And I also want to thank those individuals who have sent Zoom group chat messages with regard to the turf and the issues associated with that, and your perspectives on that. Those of you have spoken. Thank you very much. And so at this time,
well, I had a little trouble with my mute button, this Barbara Sears, but I just did want to say on the turf that we had, I think it's Exhibit DD, submitted written responses to the issues, and listening to these issues, they seem to be the same issues as previously raised. So subject to our objection, we do have in the record those responses, which in view of the comments made by the hearing examiner, we won't go into a lot of detail on, but they are there. Also, there's a little confusion in my mind on some of the testimony with regard to what DEP recommended. They recommended, and it's in the record, that the site plan be approved with the use of the turf. So I'm confused by some of the statements that seem to indicate otherwise, and that was the same issue as in terms of DOT. Their recommendations are favorable towards the site plan amendments in the design, as well as in this abandonment, they're favorable. So I would just call the attention to the actual attached recommendations to the staff report on the site plan that are the final recommendations, and I believe they're all consistent in supporting the application. So I think that's about it, unless Mr. Cloger or Mr. Weincheck want to state anything in addition based on what they've heard.
Ms. Sears, were you asking for us to pull your response on the synthetic turf issue for it to be broadcast?
No, I don't think there's any more testimony warranted on it from us. I just, in view of what the examiner has said, I just wanted to point out, to the extent things were said, I believe they're all covered in those responses. And additionally, on the questions of being able to circulate through the site with bicyclers or pedestrians, again, definitely that was a major goal of the design. That was one of the main purposes of the design, and that has been preserved. Around this turf, which is only about 8,000 square feet of the entire area, are hardscape that allow passages on both perimeters. So again, the case meets, or the design meets, the criteria of the ADA. So with that, unless there are anybody else on my team, on the client's side, that want to state anything, I think we are complete.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Paler, I did want to answer your question earlier. This is Ian with VICA and the applicant. Yeah, the bicycle width at a minimum is 12 feet wide on the south side of that hardscape there.
Very good.
Between the building and the tree pit.
And just to reiterate or recap what you said, it's not edge marked, bidirectional, and also will be accommodating pedestrians all in that same venue. The whole intent is to notify pedestrians that bicyclists will be using this area as well. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. There are medallions that are to be placed through that alignment.
Right.
And that system was worked out. I was just going to say, maybe you're going to say the same thing, Brian. I apologize, but that system was worked out closely with park and planning, transportation staff, and staff, and it was to allow that circulation to take place and further the intent of the bicycle master plan that it be a mixed street, shared street type of design. Brian, I'm sorry.
No, that exactly right. You said exactly what I.
Yes, and thank you for that. And although I'm not silencing you and not asking for additional input on this, but I appreciate you mentioning or talking about the SynTurf again, because at the end of your discussion, you did say that you wanted to talk at the end about it. And so thank you for doing that. I did have some questions about it. I've heard the comments that individuals have made on this. And so I know some folk are saying that they want to re-comment on the matter. I don't know that that's necessary. Ms. Conway, I'll give you a minute to say what you believe you want to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paler. I appreciate the opportunity to add some comments. The more I hear, the more concerned I am. On one hand, I think most people on this call are quite pleased with the general plan and with the idea of redoing what was a tired area and giving back to the community that way. But even this piece about the bicycles, it has not been clear to me that it is not an edge marked. No, that it is not edge marked, that the medallions are simply to give somebody a heads up that there may be a bike coming along behind them while they're on there with their dog or their stroller or whatever, which seems to sort of go against the idea of dwelling, I think was the word that was used earlier by the applicant. Similarly, the idea that the existing infrastructure can handle additional MS4 violation is questionable, as is the matter of the, and to me, this goes to the technical aspects of abandonment. The stormwater system is not up to par, first of all, and second of all, it's certainly not up to par for adding material of highly variable buoyancy, especially depending on how much of the glue is stuck to it. And it's going to be an ongoing, as Dr. Michaels said, an ongoing point source pollution. And I did not hear that addressed. I did not hear anybody address the matter of lead, of PFAS, which even Donald Trump's EPA is freaked out about. There are lawsuits all over the country for people adding PFAS to the water table. I did not hear anybody address the fact that synthetic turf runs 50 to 70 degrees hotter than ambient temperature in direct sunlight, which no matter how many trees you will have direct sunlight. Is that really where people are going to want to sit and drink their coffee? I did not hear anybody address the direct question of flammability. Again, I can show you clippings across the country of fields that have caught on fire, and those are fields with silica on them that helps mitigate the flammability of the surface. This will have nothing but yesterday's coffee and glue on it. And cigarettes. I can imagine people sitting there just as they do on grass, playing with the grass and pulling on it and digging at it. There are going to be burns from cigarettes. There are going to be kids playing with matches. Synthetic turf is famous for appealing to vandals who want to go around and make a mess.
Well, I appreciate that.
None of which I approve of, but all of which is predictable. I didn't hear any of those things addressed. So thank you for the opportunity, Mr.
Thank you so much, Ms. Conway. I appreciate it. Mr. Fishman, I'll allow you some time as well. Yes, sir.
I'm a little bit confused about the comments about how the Department of Environmental Protection approved this, because I'm reading their letter and it says, the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, has received numerous letters from concerned citizens about the proposed use of artificial turf on Ellsworth and believes that a more environmentally preferable alternative should be utilized. That's the July 30th memo from DEP. So yes, sir. And I also point out that the planning board also said in their letter of July 30th that they're looking for you for whether or not it is appropriate to have synthetic turf on Ellsworth Road. Thank you, Ellsworth Drive.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Paler, we also have a comment from Ms. Shruti from the Sierra Club, noting that their written testimony also mentions and includes some of what Ms. Conway brought up earlier.
Yes, I've been apprised of that. Thank you so much, Ms. McCray.
Mr. Paler, may I ask a question?
So again, you can provide a comment and frame it in the form of a question, but at this point, we're not going to have a dialogue back and forth about this matter. So
thank you. My question is simply, to better understand your role and whether you have the power to approve or disapprove this petition with reasonable conditions.
Yeah.
Could you say, theoretically say, I want to protect the community from environmental problems? Is
So,
that within your power?
Mr. Lord, that's a great question, and I sought to cover that in my introductory remarks. I'm going to review all of the information, the discussions that have taken place here, the documentation that's been provided on this, and I'm going to make a recommendation to the county executive as to whether or not we should move forward with the abandonment on whatever merits or lack thereof. And so that is my role.
Okay. My comments about the First Amendment before and a free association were in that nature. I believe they may not be as important as the environment, but to me as a lawyer or a past lawyer, they very much are. So thank you.
Okay, I know there was an ask about the timeline, and I believe that is for, are you talking about a decision in making a determination as to whether or not the abandonment, the limited abandonment will be supported or rejected? Is that what you're asking, Ms. Conway?
Yes, it is. I'm just trying to figure out where the decision points are going to move from one body to the next. Thank you.
Yeah, right now, I appreciate that. Right now, we don't have a definitive timeline. Again, we've got the 2-week comment period. And so sometime within 4 to 6 weeks after that, my recommendation will be completed. And I'm certainly not sure how long it'll take to route through the county executive's office or the county council. All right, if there are no further comments from meeting participants, I am declaring this hearing closed. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the record will remain open until September 28th, 2020, and that will allow us to accommodate additional comments for the record. Those comments and any other correspondence may be addressed to Ms. Tierra McCrae, Montgomery County Department of Transportation, 100 Edison Park Drive, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20878. And I apologize, I'll say this again, Montgomery County Department of Transportation, 100 Edison Park Drive, 4th floor, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20878. Thank you very much, everyone. This hearing
Thank you.
is ended.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.